Welcome to the Tow Club Industry Podcast. I really appreciate you tuning in. Today, we're going to be talking about some of the things that are very important to running your towing company. As many of you know, I'm a medium-sized tower myself. I operate in the San Francisco Bay Area, and oftentimes some of the comments and messages we get surrounding the discussions on social media about our industry oftentimes show me and others that there's still a lot to be done in our industry to improve certain aspects. I'd like to share some facts about the towing industry that will help set up some of these discussions. So, average number of employees for towers is 8.5. There are 47,000 towing companies in the United States. The average salary for a tow truck driver is $43,000. Obviously, that's going to vary dramatically depending on the jurisdiction, locale, area, city, county, state, etc. Very important statistic here. Fatality risk in our profession, 15 times other industries. We're going to really talk about that and emphasize that momentarily. Net profit margin average, 10%. So really the question is, how do these facts, I should say, affect the operations in your towing company? Hey, thanks again for watching. I just wanted to interrupt this podcast to let you know about something we're really excited about, and that's Tow Club version 3.0. Our engineering team is really working their asses off on this product. We're hoping to introduce it at the end of the year. We might be off by a few weeks, but we're working really hard. And if you have any questions or are interested in a demonstration, please reach out to us and we will schedule that for you. Thanks again. So we discussed some facts. Time to talk a little bit about, if you're a tower and you're an owner, what are you doing for human resources? You know, there's an average of 8.5 employees per towing company nationally. So this tells me a few things. It tells me that in large part, towers have a very limited administrative staff. Obviously, you know, if you're running 3 trucks, you probably don't have 8 people working in the office to go along with those 3 trucks. If you're running 5 trucks, 7 trucks, you might have 1, possibly 2. And certainly, I don't know everybody's situation, but anecdotally speaking, and with the amount of contacts, conversations, etc., I've had with towers over the years, and with my own personal experiences, I should say, I can attest to this fact. Most towing operators have, particularly those that are on the smaller and medium side, have a very limited administrative task. And here's the reality. Human resource tasks, you know, when you have a small staff, they may not be comprehensive. Things may get missed. There could be exposure for towing operators for the manner in which, you know, your employment agreement is with this towing operator, your breaks, your time off, you know, and not being compliant with this stuff can obviously be costly. I know some of you have been in business for a while. You can probably attest to this. Me, I've been in business for 18 to 20 years. I can attest to this. Accusations of employer misconduct, even with good intentions, oftentimes it's very easy to make a mistake in terms of human resources. And I'll share some of my personal experiences with this. So I've been in business nearly 20 years in the towing industry. And, you know, when I first got started, I didn't understand the value of human resources. In fact, I remember a long time ago, somebody soliciting me when I had 4 employees saying, oh, we provide, you know, HR services. And I remember kind of chuckling like, what the hell is that? And, you know, to look back from 20 years ago to now, you know, somewhere in between, I began to develop issues associated with the fact that I didn't dedicate enough time and effort and resources into understanding how important these parts of running a business are. It's easy to forget when you're in the truck. You're trying to make ends meet. You're trying to get those calls completed. You're trying to turn a profit. And oftentimes, when you're a small business, you know, things that will cost you money are oftentimes not the priority because you're trying to generate revenue. So I can certainly understand and appreciate that. But along the way, There were times where, I nearly got into hot water for something that may or may not have been missed on the HR side. So it's definitely something to think about. And, if you feel like you're lacking in that area after listening to this or hearing stories about this, reach out to an HR professional. There are many out there that can help you. Towards the end of the video, we'll talk a little bit about some of the resources that we're going to include in the video description. Hey, thanks again for watching. I just want to interrupt this episode with a brief description of Tow Club's dispatching and locating feature and integration. We have partnered with Azuga, which enables Tow Club users to be able to, on the dispatch screen, locate all of their vehicles, access their location, all the vital information that a dispatcher and tower would need to properly manage the dispatch functionality of that company and to properly understand where your fleet is located. I'm very proud of our engineering team, and I'm very thankful to Azuga for participating in this integration. Thanks again for watching. Yet another area that I think that's important as a topic for discussion is workplace safety. We talked a little bit earlier, 15 times the national average is our fatality risk in this business. So what does that mean? What does it mean to have 15 times the risk? Apart from being terrifying and apart from being a statistic that maybe would deter a potential candidate from wanting to enter our industry, it means a lot. And and I'll spell out a few things. I mean, first of all, if you have 15 times the risk, what's your mitigation strategy? What does that mean? So a lot of people say, well, slow down and move over. That's wonderful. I get that. But let's talk about things that you can control, because it's very difficult to account for something that you can't control, someone else's negligence. You can't control someone else's negligence. But you can control the things that can reduce the chances of one of your people getting hurt. Are your trucks outfitted optimally? Are they inspected? Do you have the proper lighting and safety equipment? Talking about things apart from fatalities, we have 2 times the injury risk on national average. So injury risk, again, what are you doing to mitigate injury? Is there apparel? We talk about the reflective apparel that's required, and obviously that depending on locale, etc. But do they have the proper class 3 ANSI apparel, because they're working on the roadway? So there's definitely something to discuss there to make sure. Do you have proper training? Do you have a proper IIPP manual so that if somebody's hurt, do they know what to do if somebody's hurt? Do you have first aid on hand? These are all things that you should be thinking about when it comes to mitigating injury. Obviously injuries and potential for injury is not just relegated to being in the tow truck out in the field. You also have a lot of scenarios at your facility which could be a risk for injury. Most towing operators have forklifts at their facility. Are the people operating that forklift, are they certified to operate that forklift? Do you have video cameras at your facility? Do you have the proper security and signage? Again, not just injuries for your own staff, but we talk about liability protection. You want to make sure that somebody coming to your facility does not get hurt. If you aren't doing these things, ask yourself, why not? Why are you not doing these things? Some of these steps are very, very easy to accomplish and could potentially, mitigate the risk of injury. Hey, thanks again for watching. I just want to interrupt this podcast with a brief description of a feature that I'm very proud of that the Tow Club engineering team has implemented into the product. If you are a tower that has to perform lien sales and you have a storage facility, Tow Club has an integrated lien feature that really makes your life easy. The vehicle's in your yard, it's there for 72 hours, you press a button in Tow Club, the lien starts processing. The next calendar day, you've got that lien paperwork in your car file in Tow Club. It's ready to go. Your auction date is captured in Tow Club. It generates a dynamic auction listing that is dynamic in the sense that, if you release that vehicle to its owner prior to the sale date, it's going to pop off that list. And it really makes lot management so easy. If you have any questions on this, reach out to us. We'll gladly give you a demonstration. Thanks again for letting me tell you about this feature. So another thing that towers, I'm chuckling a little bit because this is something that's going to speak to a lot of people, but employee development and retention. Whether you're talking to owners or drivers, particularly owners, but a lot of times drivers, you have a long-time tow driver. If they're a valuable employee, they're going to have the best interest of the company at heart. So oftentimes we see these discussions online. A lot of people, I can't find drivers. These young people don't want to work. It's almost becoming a tick. Anyone over the age of 40 or 50 assumes that somebody who's 25 doesn't want to work. And without disparaging age groups here, I think it's important to understand that what are the determining factors as to whether or not people want to work? It's very simple to say, well, pay. Well, yeah, that's certainly one reason. And $43,000 national average for our industry, what does that really mean? Obviously, there's going to be a range there. I'm going to say it's 35 to 110. And that's an anecdote, and it's an estimate, and it's based on the fact that although I understand that economically speaking, there are parts of the country in which maybe there are guys working for $35,000 a year, I happen to operate in an area where guys are probably making, light duty tow operators are probably making somewhere along the lines of $70,000 to $120,000 a year. So I know that range is real. Here's another thing that's important. We talked about 47,000 towing companies. We talked about the average. 62% of towing companies, there's several surveys done online. We'll include some of these sources, I should say, in the video description. But 62% of towing companies are griping about a lack of drivers. 47,000 towing companies. What am I getting at here? You have competition. So what does that mean? Well, you can't be faced with a lot of competition, be faced with the challenge of compensating guys correctly, and also gripe about, people's work ethic. People are going to go and want to work where the compensation is fair and where they are treated properly. 46% of towers report that they are actively hiring. So ask yourself, why would a driver work for you? What are you offering? What makes your company attractive? So I'll share a personal story here about myself. And by no means am I suggesting that I've solved the myriad of problems that come with lack of applicants, the difficulties in hiring. I haven't. But I've done a couple things along the way that I'd like to share with you that I think would be helpful. About 10 years ago, we went to a 4-day work week. That alone had a dramatic effect on the prospects of hiring because in our area, which is very expensive to live in, one of the challenges we had was, I shared the salary range with you. One of the challenges we had was that most of the applicants lived greater than 20 or 30 miles outside of town. So what does that mean? That means that they're going to be commuting. Well, if they're commuting and now you can go to a 4-day work week, you just improved their quality of life. Most of the guys, we actually had an election at our workplace, and it was everybody wanted a 4-day work week. So they work 4 10-hour shifts. They have one less day to commute. And that alone was very helpful. When I first got started in business, we didn't have healthcare benefits. We didn't have dental. We didn't have a 401k match. I took pride in the fact that I was able to introduce those things into our workplace, and they, along with other things, and our philosophy of treating the employees correctly, had a dramatic improvement because, again, people share their stories from their workplace. If they have the company's best interests at heart, they're sharing stories of, hey, we're hiring, etc. And These little things can have a dramatic impact on the prospects of hiring because people want to feel appreciated. And little things like this in your operation could dramatically improve the quality of life. Something to consider. Another thing that's frequently discussed, and some other points that I'd like to bring up surrounding running your towing business. And this is bookkeeping and accounting. So some statistics. National average, we touched on this earlier, 10% net profit margin for the towing industry. So it's easy for me to sit here and scoff and say, oh, that's not enough, et cetera, et cetera. But there are some realities associated with this. So 46% of towers report a desire to purchase tow trucks. This was in 2022. A quarter of towers reported increasing their fleet size in 2021. So ask yourself, what's your margin of error? In other words, if you are in fact making somewhere in the neighborhood of 10% net profit margin, about half of you are saying, hey, I want to buy more trucks. A quarter of you are saying, I made my fleet bigger this year. What criteria are you using to guide your purchasing decisions? Obviously, tow trucks aren't the only thing you're purchasing, but that's the big property and equipment. Those are the big ones there. So, do you have and or are you consulting with your accountant or bookkeeper prior to making these decisions? Do you have some criteria established? Do you have markers established in your accounting procedures? Like, whether or not you need the write-off or not is, can you justify the purchase of new equipment? We had a guest on just a few short months ago, who talked about the spikes. This was Gavin from House of Records, who provided some very meaningful insight into the rising costs of equipment and difficulty in getting equipment. I mean, never mind the price increases, the difficulty in waiting. So this adds another wrinkle to your decision. Hey, if I order something now, when am I going to get it? Now, when I get it, am I going to be able to afford it by the time I get it? How much will I lose during that waiting period? I'll share a personal story with you. In my business, I was doing most of my accounting and bookkeeping myself early on, and it was very much seat of the pants. We're towers. I don't expect my audience, I'm sure there are towers out there that have a background in accounting, but I think for the large majority of towers, it is not something that can be done very efficiently on your own. I do suggest people to reach out to a professional to, establish a relationship, to ask questions, to understand, hey, when should I be making a purchase? Can I afford this, number one? What do I need to do in terms of calculating whether or not I can afford this? Your accountant is not a tower either. So there is going to be, I'll say this with all due respect, there's going to be some ignorance on both sides here. The accountant is not going to know your business in its entirety, and you are certainly not, in most cases, going to understand the numbers. So again, proper communication with a professional that's a bookkeeper or accountant is going to do you a world of good in terms of making those decisions. So I wanted to close this out with a few comments. First, I want to thank you all for listening and watching. I hope this content was meaningful. I'm always going to look out for the people that are subscribing to this channel in terms of providing content that, if nothing else, I mean, I can probably, and I probably am boring you to death, but if nothing else, it's meaningful and it could maybe provide some answers and or solutions. We've got a ton of links buried in today's video description that's going to hopefully shed some light, provide some supporting information for some of the things that we've discussed. And I'll leave you with this. Remember, if you aren't willing to know, don't tow.